everyone, Camilla here from Decodable Readers Australia. Today we're going to briefly touch the concept of comprehension. I'm going to give you some key takeaways to really set the scene for developing your understanding of comprehension. First, let's understand comprehension and the two components of comprehension. We actually have a language comprehension and written comprehension. Language comprehension being the understanding of language, especially spoken language. Now, written comprehension is the understanding of text, not only what's written there, but an understanding of the text structure and author purpose and the language that we find within the written component. Now, reading comprehension is a combination of both, a rich understanding of language, both spoken and written. When students first attend school, their language comprehension is far more developed than their reading comprehension. The reason being is that they're only just embarking on the learning to read journey. Therefore, they're just starting to learn words that are very basic CVC, consonant, vowel, consonant words. And decoding is extremely important in that first stage of reading. Now, their language comprehension is further developed because they've been part of a spoken language environment. So it's really important to have a devoted time to extend that language comprehension using rich texts that are read to the students and engage in lots of conversations around the topic, the content, the text structure, and even the vocabulary, which we'll talk about very shortly. Now, on the other time, that supported reading time, that is a time to decode those words, learning that blending and segmenting process. Now, it doesn't mean that there's no comprehension focus in this time, but I like to call this time a checking for understanding. In the back of all of our Series 1 decodable readers, as well as our early readers, we have questions for checking that understanding. We know that it's important that students decode the words accurately, but also can hear themselves read and understand what they're reading. So those questions are to check for understanding. Lots of teachers ask me about reading comprehension strategies. Strategies like predicting and inferring, evaluating, summarizing, questioning, and these are the types of strategies that you can apply to loads of books. And I used to teach them all the time right from the early ages. But my thinking has really shifted. Now, how has that shifted? I don't disregard reading strategies. I think they're great, they're important, but they're not the first thing to develop. The very first thing that we need to develop in order to have accurate comprehension is vocabulary and background knowledge. Let's put it like this. We can't expect students to predict or infer, question, or summarize a text that they don't have a good understanding of. It makes that strategy completely pointless. So what needs to come first is a deep understanding of the content knowledge, the storyline, the grammatical structure, and most importantly, the vocabulary. And that's why explicit teaching of vocabulary, especially those tier 2 words, is so important. Now, if you want to learn about vocabulary instruction and the tiers of those words, I highly recommend going back to last week's video where we learn all about vocabulary instruction. But vocabulary is extremely important, and I'm going to give you an example. Now, here's one of our decodable texts called The Quest. Now, if students don't understand this word quest, then reading this whole text talking about the quest may not give them a good understanding of the story. It's really important before embarking on the reading that vocabulary is taught, and that's why at the back of our book for teachers we actually have the word, the tier 2 word that appears in our text that teachers can actually explicitly teach prior to the reading. In my experience, students that have difficulties with reading comprehension usually have problems with vocabulary and content knowledge rather than the application of skills or strategies like predicting, inferring, summarizing, and questioning. When we can really develop that vocabulary and that content knowledge, then those application of those skills work. So when people ask me what do I believe the best intervention strategy for lifting reading comprehension, I usually fall back to vocabulary instruction and that exposure to rich, deep knowledge and building knowledge based on the topic. Now, I'm just going to use a personal experience. I picked up my daughter's biology book, and although I could decode the words, I had no understanding of the content, and the vocabulary was so large and I had no prior exposure or knowledge. So when I'm reading this text, there was no reading comprehension. There was no comprehension at all because the topic was unfamiliar and the words were unfamiliar. And that's what it can be like for students. I cannot apply a strategy like predicting or summarizing or analyzing or inferring to that text because the very first things that I don't have is background knowledge and vocabulary. So that's a very important takeaway when you're analyzing students' reading comprehension. So the key takeaways are these. Language comprehension and reading comprehension are two completely different things, and it's important to devote time to both. Language comprehension, where rich, authentic texts are read to the students and students are engaged in that language comprehension and understanding, is one component. The next is reading comprehension, making understanding of what is read. Now, the next key takeaway and the most important is that vocabulary and content understanding comes before strategies. We cannot apply strategies to text and expect that reading comprehension will suddenly improve. The key to improving reading comprehension is understanding the vocabulary and the content knowledge first, as well as the grammar and text structure. Then we can apply those other strategies that we talked about and deepen our understanding further.